Welcome to Sincerely Me, a podcast about self-discovery and inner work so you can cultivate a deeper relationship to yourself and show up more fully in your work and life. My name is Tallia and I'm honored to be your host. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited about this episode. Roshani and I went to high school together and we had a little bit too much fun recording this episode. We hadn't seen each other in about 10 years. So we had clearly a lot to catch up on as she has pursued her path of becoming a New York Times best-selling author. She shares about her journey, the crossroads, being in law school, deciding to defer a year and pursue her passion. She shares about the truth behind the curtain, what it's actually like to be a writer. She shares about the moment she found out she made the New York Times bestseller list on an airplane. We also discuss the pressure to please and meet expectations without a roadmap to success. We talk about failure. We talk about the role of comparison in social media. We talk about her creative process as a writer and the way she connects with her inner child to produce work that she's proud of and to create stories that have a lasting impact. So lots in store in this episode today, and we, definitely reminisce on some old high school glory days. We talk about our very embarrassing AOL screen names. So there's a lot you don't want to miss. Another thing I will add is Roshani and I, because we hadn't seen each other in so long and because we're both in Atlanta, decided to record together in person in her beautiful home. Because of that, the audio quality is a little bit rough, not gonna lie. The ceilings are tall, there was a bit of an echo, and there was also some construction going on outside. So please bear with us with the audio. It was just important for us to be in person for this and actually connect in real life. So there is that. And then the last couple things I will share, exciting news that I don't think I've shared on the podcast yet, is that the Inner Work Circle is officially full. And the group has kicked off this month. If you're interested in joining the next cohort of the Inner Work Circle and spend a year prioritizing your relationship with yourself and connecting to yourself on a deeper level, you can add your name to the waitlist for the January 2020 cohort, and I will add that link to the show notes. Two other things that are coming up. One is a 4-part workshop series that I'm hosting here in Atlanta at the Lola with Lillian Charles, who I did an awesome podcast episode with called Taking Up Space just a few weeks back. It is called Fierce Love, and it is a 4-part workshop series to help you revise your relationship to fear and reconnect to yourself, strengthen your relationship to love and self-love more specifically. And then last week I mentioned this and I'll share it again. A month from today is the Realign Retreat here in Georgia at Serenbe, about 30 miles south of the city of Atlanta. A one-day retreat to help you pause, reflect, and recenter that I will be co-facilitating with Dara Brustein and Lena Franklin, both of whom have also been guests on the podcast. That is all that is upcoming from me. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Miss Roshani Chokshi. Everyone, welcome. Hello. Before we get started, we have something really funny to share.
Okay.
Or just interesting.
Yes.
So Roshani and I went to high school together.
We did.
And as we were brainstorming topics and things to talk about, she goes, you know what's so interesting? We both won senior superlatives. Roshani won most likely to succeed in high school. And I won best all around senior.
Yep.
So, just two powerhouses sitting 10 years later.
10 years later. Well, it's very sad to say.
Literally 10-year reunion is this October, and I'm forcing you to come.
I don't want to
with
go.
me.
All
yep. Right. So here we are talking about her as the most likely to succeed woman.
And you as the best.
And she's got quite the story and quite the journey to becoming a New York Times bestselling author.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the road.
The road.
Yes.
Okay. The road honestly just started as a kid. You hear your bedtime stories and all the fairy tales. And I think for me, getting involved with writing was something I did when I was really young. And almost like out of this narcissistic self-insert thing where you don't see yourself in movies or television or books or on the cover of stories. And so for me, I started writing just because I wanted to see somebody like myself in those books. And I don't think I ever thought something would come of it, but I've been writing ever since, but just in the background of my life, kind of thing. And then I think it was after I finished college and I took a year off. I had this really depressing job in a cold tax law office with a ficus plant named Bert. He was my only companion. And I ran plot twists by Bert as I wrote and, quote, studied for the LSAT. I wasn't studying. I should have studied. And then I went to law school.
Okay, so, but you got into law school, so obviously
I got
you
into
studied.
law school. Yes, so the studying you should study. Studying is good. Quietly writing and talking to a plant in the background is also good.
Yeah.
And then, I found a literary agent, which was awesome. And you kind of find them you Google how to get an agent. And if an agent charges you money to read your story, you should just cut and run immediately. That's not what they're supposed to do. I signed with her in the fall of law school. We heavily revised the book. We got hundreds of rejections. And then in March of 2015, the book sold.
Okay.
And that's sort of how that started.
So, tell me about being in law school and then having this very clear passion, writing a book, pursuing that. I know there was a crossroads moment for you.
Yes.
So talk about
that was like a glossed over, fine.
I'm like, that's the part of the story I want to hear, because you were on a path, a very clear path, pursuing law, and then there was something in you that was like, no, this is
what I'd rather do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to tell your immigrant parents after they've crossed oceans, thanks, I'm gonna go write about dragons indefinitely. You just can't do that. That's so rude. And I was a 14th century British literature major in college, so obviously dreamt of a high-paying job with a very useful, flexible things to offer the world. But for me, it was this sense of, if I didn't try this now, I would be making excuses for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's true for everybody's story. I mean, the wonderful thing about finding success and joy and happiness is that there's no one right way to go about it.
Yeah.
And so many of the authors who I respect and admire, they had started off in law school, they'd finished law school, sometimes they practiced for years, and then the story that they needed to tell arrived to them, and they were able to take away the time and space to work on it, you know?
Yeah.
I think the part of the reason I was able to take the time off that I did was because of privilege. My parents, although kind of bewildered, were still really supportive. And they let me come back home. They let me hang out in the basement and just write.
Yeah.
And they let me have the space to do that. And I would not have been able to do that without them.
So tell me more about the actual decision process of, no, thank you. No more law school. I'm not gonna continue down this path, because I'm sure for a lot of people, once they're in, they feel stuck. They feel like they just have to write it out and stick to it because they're afraid of what people might think, or they're afraid of not being successful because success looks a certain kind of way, and to turn the opportunity down, to say no to a whatever. That's not what a lot of people have the courage to do. So I want to get into
that feeling.
Yeah.
I like how you're just no.
No, I'm
feel it back, Father. I'm okay.
I'm not having it. I need more.
So I made the decision to defer from law school when we got our first book deal. And I talked to my agent about it a lot, and I was like, do you think this is the right choice? And she was very honest. Typically, most writers have a day job, and that day job is something that's not writing related. And they come back home and they carve out the space to write. But I wanted to take a chance, and so I said that I would put it off for a year. And in that summer, right before I officially deferred, I had the chance to work at a big law firm in Atlanta, and to get a taste of that.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I really enjoy wearing black pumps, and just having work professional attire is a fun thing for me. And I loved and craved the structure of it, you know?
Yeah.
The sense of okay, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do this thing. And then when I leave, all my paperwork and nonsense stays in that office. I close the door and I go. And that has never been the experience with writing. Or just any kind of entrepreneurial field. There's this terrible tension of all this pressure that you've put upon yourself. So when I spent that year off writing, it was my first taste of what it would be like to write full time. And there's a lot of loneliness associated with it, a lot of working things out by yourself and really challenging yourself to create your own schedules and everything. And when my first book hit the New York Times bestselling list, it was this huge, it was an incredible moment, but also like a strange moment. We're lucky enough to go on tour. Your publisher pays for stuff, but it's not necessarily the most glamorous thing. I was like shoved to the ass end of the plane. I was sitting next to this motorcycle dude who was like clearly in the middle of a breakup, and I'm just like, I really want to leave. And I paid way too much money for Wi-Fi on the plane because you always know when you hit the list, it's the first Wednesday after your book releases, and the list comes out at 4:30 p.m.
Okay.
So I checked.
You were on the plane?
I was on the plane, and I checked my email, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, ah. And he was like, did you get dumped too? I'm like, no. I'm like, no, dude. Like, also, like, what? Why would I, like, why over email? That's so rude. So that does remind me of the time I was dumped over AIM in 7th grade. I'm not over it.
Yeah.
But, it's okay.
So we can get into that.
Into all the
podcast
drama.
Episode part 2, how I got dumped over AOL Instant Messenger. I must ask now, what was your AOL Messenger name?
It was like something really stupid. It was something like, it was so stupid and Shakespearean because I thought I was being deep. It was like Desdemona Rising because she's the wife of the fellow who gets killed. I don't know like why I was like, yeah, her. I like totally sympathize. Like, what the hell?
I think it's better than mine. Mine was just mine. Now I have to say it.
What is it?
Baby T046. Baby spelled BABIE _ T 046. Anyways. Back to the podcast. So you were on the plane, you opened your email, you realized that your name was on the list.
Yeah. And I was like, did they make a mistake? Should I pay them so I can stay on it? Like, I don't know how it works because the algorithm for the New York Times bestseller list is famously secret. Nobody explains it to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like you just really don't know how it works. But that day was the same day that I got a taste of just what it means when you put your work out there and people can just rip it apart. You know, they'll just like, 1 star this, I hated this, trivial, ripoff, unoriginal. And you're sitting there with your like heart just like zested on the floor, like, oh no, it destroys you. And I thought for a moment, like, well, maybe I could take a step back from this because it's wonderful to hit this milestone, but I don't have the thick skin necessary to have your work like out in public. It was this terrible learning curve. But I decided that I owed it to myself to see what I could do. And you know, the weird thing is when you're writing your first book, there's no expectation for it. You know, you can mention it at a dinner party and somebody will be like, oh, that's cool, and like quickly change the subject to Game of Thrones because they don't give a shit. And you're like, that's cool. Like, that's fine. But when it comes to your second book, and if your first one is out there, now there's expectations. Will it perform the same way as the first one?
The pressure is, I can only imagine.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you wrote your first book lovingly and in secret and with all this expansive time. And now there's a contract and you've got 1 year to do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And you're like, fuck. A terrible mistake. Like, I literally have Googled every single year that I've had a book come out, how to book. Because I can't remember. Every book that you write or thing that you attempt, it only teaches you how to do that one project.
Yeah.
There's no roadmap for how to do it again.
Yeah.
And that second book really broke me in a lot of ways. It challenged me creatively. It was the first time where I was trying to make sense of the publishing world and navigate it for myself. And then feeling like a failure because that book did not hit the list. And I feel as though it's like this ugly child that sort of like slipped like in between the cracks of my career. And yet that book is the one that means the most to me in so many ways because it was the one that made me take a chance and say, I don't want to go back to law school. even though this book hasn't materially performed as well as the first, it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that I'm confident with my own imagination, and that people can have the opinions that they want about your work, but what we're doing is a marathon and not a sprint. And you don't build an empire or a career or anything overnight. It requires a body of work, and that means writing the next book and the next book and the next one.
Yeah. I love that. I love how the point you made there is like success to the outside world externally in the context of writing a book is defined in one way.
Yeah.
But for you, it felt that book for you was the like
it was the one that said you could do it.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, it did not perform well at all. And I love that book so much.
By certain standards, right? By external standards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's the external standards of it. And I love that because it's really hard to divorce yourself from what you think a successful book should look like, or a successful author should even look like. You know, we judge ourselves by all kinds of things. How many festivals did you get invited to? How many Instagram followers do you have, or whatever else?
Yeah.
But those are not the immortal things that makes a story last forever. It is the story itself.
Totally. So let's talk a little bit more about self-comparison, because you just hit on it a little bit. And I know from conversations we've had and just in the world that I'm in the coaching world, in the age of social media, in the just like constant bombardment of what everyone else is doing.
Or branding. Like I was branding. What? With like a hot iron? That sounds terrible. But just like, no, like in this ineffable digital sense. I'm like, that sounds worse.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a whole different ball game. So what challenges has that presented to you? I'm happy to talk about it in my own life as well, and just kind of see.
Well, I definitely want to hear it because, you know, we're talking about our senior superlatives and how much freaking pressure that was. Best all around, most likely to succeed. Fuck. Like, what are you gonna do? Like 10 years later, and you show up at your high school reunion. Like, what if I was just saying I'm still working on my Harry Potter fan fiction?
Right.
It's going great. 500 hits this month. I mean, I don't know. And I would probably be really excited about that. I never got that many hits on my fan fiction. But, you know, it was weird because right after college, I graduated, and I think you can also like speak to this, the challenge of finding a job.
Yeah.
And what to do. And everybody's updating their Facebook statuses that they're going to be a junior associate at this fabulous consultancy firm, and they're moving to New York, and here I am moving back to my parents' house and slowly trying to figure it out. And I remember, and I can't remember who this was, although it would be so fun and vengeful, but somebody literally was like, remember when you were most likely to succeed and you don't have a job? I'm not even kidding.
Someone said that?
Someone said that because here I am trying to like make this self-deprecating Facebook status when this was like the age where we like constantly updated our Facebook status. And
that was a day.
That was a day. That was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It was like when you had AIM and like your away message, if it wasn't like a Panic at the Disco.
BRB, having dinner.
Yeah, having dinner, or here's the song I'm listening to. It's a Death Cab for Cutie all day, every day.
Oh my God.
What my soul looks like, you know?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And that was when I actually just decided to do away with Facebook entirely. I deleted it, and I wasn't on social media for a couple of years because I hated how terrible it made me feel about myself. And then when I had to get back on it, for a lot of professional reasons, you know, so readers would be able to find you, and also just for the sense of online community, which can be a really enriching and fulfilling experience. This thing about remembering that what you choose to share and what you're seeing is a highlight reel of somebody else is the thing that would help me go to sleep at night. Because otherwise, it would just give me so much anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you feel like going through all those same things?
I mean, I think for me, what's challenging for me right now about social media is that it feels very counter to a lot of what I coach people through in terms of like mindfulness and being present and like focusing on yourself and living a life that aligns with what you value, and like how does social media fit into that? And I always fall back into the trap of, but if I want to be successful in my business, I need to be on Instagram.
Right.
Which is true and is not true. And, you know, it's like it's complicated.
Yeah.
And I love it for the fact that it gives us, it's such an easy platform to use, the exposure, the visibility, the connection. But at the same time, I don't know, for me, when it comes to at least using social media for business, it's very saturated and it's very, everyone's kind of doing the same thing, saying the same thing, posting the same thing. And it's just lost personal touch. Like it's
I love that. You're exactly
so impersonal.
Right. Yeah, it's really impersonal.
Yeah.
A lot of it is planned out in advance.
Yeah.
And for me, like, that's just a way to keep myself sane, you know, just to be like, oh, look at this layout. I like the color. The color is nice.
Yeah.
And, you know, just sitting in my pajamas in like day 4 and posting this glamorous thing from years ago, being like, remember Paris? Paris was great. Like, that kind of thing. And it's so strange because I feel like it speaks to this question of what it means to be relevant and what it means to have a career with longevity, you know, and those look like entirely separate things.
Yeah.
Especially like in the arts world, you know, like you look at Suzanne Collins who wrote Hunger Games. You can't find her anywhere. I don't think she has like a website, but social media presence, none.
Yeah.
Has it affected her success? No.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And it's good to be able to point to people like that when when the story in your mind is, I have to do this or be this to be successful. It's like, well, who's proven that that's actually false?
Yeah.
Because they're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We don't know what really pushes the needle, but I will say the wonderful thing about it is connecting to other people. I love writing for kids. They're amazing. And when they tag you in something like fan art that they made, or they dressed up like your character for Halloween, it kind of reminds you of the people that you're writing for.
Totally.
You know, and the flip side of that being you're tagged in a 1-star review by someone who just doesn't think you're human anymore because you're a coach, you're an artist, you're something, you're not.
Yeah, the humanness is somehow
removed.
Stripped.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did have a podcast conversation with Tiffany Hahn, and she talked a lot about how, like, what's the thing that you'll do even knowing that someone will tear it down? Like, what are you willing to still put your heart into with the certainty that someone's not going to like it?
I love that question.
Yeah.
You know, it's weird because I think for me, it's when I discuss the difficulties of writing, you know, or I'll say something like, it is, how do I quite put it? If I talk about, like, this book was really hard for me to write for XYZ reasons, it's just as easy for someone to tear it down and be like, why are you complaining when you've got all these things, all these books under your belt, all this wonderful accomplishments? Why are you, like, complaining that it's hard or complaining that you're tired? As if for some reason you can't have like gratitude coexist with just being plain old tired.
Yeah.
You know? So that's something that I like to remind my readers of when I can, because I don't like this idea that you have to constantly create or you have to constantly be enthusiastic about making something.
Yeah.
Because that is not true of the process for what we do. It comes with a lot of exhaustion and a lot of like, why am I doing this? I hate this. This was a terrible idea. Law school was so much easier. At least it just said, read this thing.
Yeah.
And then take this test. And then I'll give you a grade.
Yep.
Nobody is grading us anymore. And I think I miss that.
Yeah. The like immediate feedback.
Yes.
Totally.
I thrive off of immediate feedback.
Yeah. We all do. It like in a lot of positive psychology research, it's something that's so necessary for us to feel like we're accomplishing and achieving something and to feel seen and recognized and appreciated.
Yeah.
Like it's not, and there's a lot of just like, I don't know, the narrative around millennials and how millennials just want to be told how good they're doing all the time and don't accept criticism. That's not necessarily true. And there is absolutely truth to the human need that we all have for feedback in real time, immediate, in some way that's like not expected, but thought about. Like, you know?
Yeah. It's funny, one of my writing friends calls it the tell me I'm pretty syndrome. It's just like, I'm not going to tell you you're pretty today. I was like, please, won't someone tell me? You know, like, not like a physical thing, but just that that I did a good job.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would be nice if the universe passed out gold stickers or said A-, you know,
Yeah.
because then
Yeah,
you're just
yeah.
like, yeah, I like scrape by.
Yeah, but you, and that's an interesting point, because as an entrepreneur, as an author, like in our own, we work for ourselves, by ourselves, with ourselves all day. So where does that come from for you?
Like the ability to get through it, or being okay with it.
Both. And like, because no one's sitting there telling you you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Where, like, how do you know? Is it like a feeling that you feel? Is it, I don't know, like, what is it for you that keeps you going, and like, who's the cheerleader within?
The cheerleader within. I love that.
Yeah.
I would honestly say it's 12-year-old hideous Rosh, who
Yes.
just was like, you know, scouring way too much like adult fan fiction and being like, interesting, what does this mean? Like, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm writing for that younger version of myself that just wanted to see themselves in a book. Because when you have that moment of connection with someone who is larger than life, or like a superhero or something else, it makes you feel as if you too are deserving of magic. You know, if I saw more girls that looked like Parvati Patel and Harry Potter, then I would have felt like, oh, okay, I also get to have magic and get to have adventure in my life and all these things.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's definitely what keeps me going.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh, so much. Okay, other questions.
Yes.
When you sit down to write, knowing that it's something that comes naturally to you and that you're passionate about, and it's a strength of yours, right? But when you tie expectation and pressure and deadlines and timelines to it, how do you, when it comes to like creativity and being able to put the right thing out into the world, tell me about the creative process.
Okay. The creative process, for me at least, is to allow something to be awful at the first point. I'm not much of a perfectionist in other aspects of my life, but when it comes to like my writing, I do love that sentence level tinkering of playing with those words and evaluating the musicality of it and all these things. And that is literally the polishing steps of a book.
Yeah.
I think for me, the writing process is to empty my brain. And for me, like, that helps to wake up very early in the morning, sometimes like 4 or 5 a.m. when you feel like the world is still asleep and you've stolen this corner of the universe just for yourself. You light your favorite candle. For me, it is a tomato candle, which I'm all out of.
Yes, tomato garden.
Yes,
the best.
Yeah, it's the leaves. It smells like something sunshine steeped.
Tomato vines. Is it tomato vines?
Yeah, and I'm just like, I love it.
Oh, so good.
I love it. It's so good.
Yes.
You're the only one who else knows like what it is. I've said that before, and they're just like, I'm sorry, you have a spaghetti candle? I'm like, that is not at all what I said.
A ketchup candle?
A ketchup candle? Like,
no, girl, I'm all for the tomato vine candle.
No, the tomato. Oh my gosh, and the candlefish one. And they like mix it with some geranium and some basil. It's just like,
I might make a stop on my way home.
You need to. It's a delight. So everybody should get a tomato candle.
I will link it in the show notes just for you.
This is important.
Yeah.
And then for me, it's kind of, I always like to have paper beside me, even though I do all my writing on the computer. And for me, I'm emotionally sketching out two things. It's the plot points of where I need the characters to get to for the sake of the story. And then I think about what I call, or what a lot of authors call, emotional beats. As a character is on their way from point A to point B, and they're getting what they think they want, when in reality you're giving them what you believe that they need, what's happening to them on an emotional level? Is there something that reminds them of something that had happened in the past? Do they learn a secret about a character who was on a journey with them? And I kind of go from there, thinking about what they want. I have an hourglass on my table. Who knows how long it will stay there, because I have a cat who will inevitably be like, interesting, this looks expensive. I'm just going to knock it over.
Oh, it's in your office. I saw it earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. And to just turn it over and free write for that like first hour. And
to let it suck. Like, I love that you said it.
Yeah.
Like, let it
just
suck.
Be awful. Yeah.
And release any expectation, any pressure, and just go.
Yeah, and really, I think especially writing for children, or teens and stuff, if their voice is not believable, if it sounds for an instant that you're condescending to that age group, those kids will put that book down so fast. Kids have like the best bullshit radar, and it makes them a terrifying audience to work for.
Yeah.
So you really have to sink into who you were at that age. What is it that you noticed first when you walked into a room or you entered a party, and then put yourself in the mindset of your character. And even if they end up going on bizarre conversational tangents, just to write it out and have it on the page kind of gives you insight into who they are, and it guides you through more scenes. It was something I saw Gillian Flynn talk about, who wrote Gone Girl, which is a great twisty book. I'm sure many of you have read. And she had actually written a bunch of scenes of the friends of the two characters watching them from a distance. It's a creepy thing to feel like you're spying on your character within your own book.
Yeah.
And it's what gave her better insight into them.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love what you just said there, because it so ties into the theme of the podcast around like self-development, connecting to yourself, because it sounds like so much of your process is connecting to your inner self.
The inner child.
The inner child.
The inner terrible goth child. I don't want any part of her right now.
But she's helping. She's helping you. She's helping you bring all this to hundreds of thousands of millions of little kids who are connecting. And
I try to give them good reminders in the books.
Yeah.
Things like, please wear your retainer. Don't do what I did. You're not infallible, and you'll end up having to get Invisalign, and it's awful.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
That's my advice to children.
That's
Please
amazing.
wear your retainer.
I love it.
Oh, and don't use Nair for too long. That was another big thing. I remember I was like 8 minutes. I'm sure that's just a soft.
Oh no.
Yeah, I
What
ended
did
up
you
with
do?
chemical burns on my face. It was
Uh-uh.
9th grade. Didn't you see me? Or maybe I ran past you.
remember.
I was like, oh no, there she goes. Best all around. Gotta run.
Cannot be seen. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, here we are today.
Here we are today.
Burn free.
Burn free.
Straight teeth. We're
Sorta.
doing good.
We're doing good.
We're doing good.
Yeah.
Okay, so since we're talking about inner child connecting to your inner self, let's talk about if you were to write a letter to yourself now. It sounds like your book really is kind of, it serves that function. But if you were to go to any point in time, present, past, future, and talk to yourself, what point in time would you go to, and what would you say to Roshani?
To Rosh. God. I would go to right after college, graduation, and I had no desire to even go to my graduation. I was like, I don't need to be in this space, and when I know I'm just going to go home tonight, all those things. And I remember that was the time where I picked up an old draft of a book, and I was looking at it and thinking, what's the point, or maybe it's going to suck, or all these things. And I would tell myself to just remember that there's no expiration date for a story. There's no expiration date to inspiration either. And that you have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
And nobody's looking. And that's a cool thing. You know? Honestly, nobody gives a shit what you're doing right now. You are no one. So just
But
go
it
for
feels so opposite, right? It
Yeah.
feels like everyone's watching, everyone's waiting, everyone's going to judge, everyone's judging.
Yeah.
When it's like you're not as important as you
Yeah.
think you are.
That's the best thing that college taught me, that I was like really not that cool. You know, like I feel like in high school I was like on top of my game. I was doing all these things. I was a newspaper editor. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
The world is falling into place. And I got to college, the world fell apart. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, who am I? I must rearrange the pieces of my soul as I put them back together.
Yeah. But that, I mean, we all have to get there at some
Yeah.
We all reach that point at some point.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize you have the power to make choices. You have the power to decide what you want your world to look like. So yeah, I'll take a shattered world, because that's the only way I'll get to put the pieces back together.
And put them together the way you want them to look like.
Yeah.
And that's like that was a scary juncture. And I think I feel that way all the time. Even every time I turn in a book or I come back from tour, and I'm always so excited that I get to do those things. But there's always the attendant fear of, am I on the right path?
Totally.
When is this going to fall apart? Who's going to like take off my trench coat, reveal me as like a pile of frogs just standing there? You know, like I don't know. But all you can do is the things that make you happy and make your soul feel nourished. And I think that even at the end of a long writing day when my hands are hurting and I sometimes out of spite end a chapter with saying, and then something blew up and all of them died because I'm mad at the characters. And I resurrect them in the morning, but I want to punish them over the course of the 8 hours when I'm sleeping. Yeah. And I know it's just like very petty, but I'm like, I hate you. I'm really mad at where you're at right now. But I know that there's nothing else I'd rather do than this and be miserable doing it at times.
Yeah. What are the indications for you that you're on the right track?
Like with a story or
just in general?
Just in general.
Yeah. Not with the story, but like in life.
In life.
Like, yes, Rosh, you're doing the thing. You're right where you need to be. What gives you that sense of trust and like knowing that you're good where you are?
I think when I am angry that a day has gone by too quickly. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, wow, time really flew. That is extraordinarily rude of it. I was not done. I'm having the best time. How dare the sun set? Kind of thing. I think that excitement to wake up the next day and to do it all over again, or to try something new. I love that feeling. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Okay, that also ties into my last question for you.
Okay, let's do it.
A life of significance. What does that mean? How would you define it? As the hammers and construction.
Life is happening around us.
Excuse the external audio.
A life of significance. When I think about what it means to be a storyteller, I think my relationship with it has changed a lot over the past couple of years. I think we just published my 5th book, which is wild. And I think when I first started out doing this, there was still that external validation need. I wanted to prove that I could do it to all the Indian aunties and uncles that were just like, your daughter dropped out of law school, you idiots. Like that kind of like thing. I'm like, haha, I did it.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to prove that I was smart. I was like, you hear sometimes from other writers, like, oh, children's literature is just, it's easy. It's a breeze. Then there was this whole like, no, I'm writing a smart book, blah, blah, blah. Now I don't care. For me, a story is significant if I made you feel something. And I think that is what significance looks like to me. When you close a book, did you feel like you were somewhere else? Did you feel like you were someone else? Good.
Yeah.
Then I did my job.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Can you tell she's an author? Can you tell she writes? She's good with words. Alrighty. Okay, so tell everyone about your books, where they can find you, and I'll link everything for them in the show notes too.
Cool. So I write fantasy books. My middle grade series, Arusha and the End of Time, is out with Disney Hyperion, and they're tales of mythological-based adventure where a young girl discovers that she is a demigod, and now everything has truly gone to hell. It is heavily inspired by Sailor Moon, so if you ever liked that as a kid, I got you. And my other series, I've written Star Touch Queen and A Crown of Wishes, which are fairy tale retellings. The first one is heavily inspired by Hades and Persephone and Beauty and the Beast. And then my latest young adult novels are The Gilded Wolves, which if you ever watched National Treasure but did not like Nicolas Cage's face, then I have a book for you, and it's set in 19th century Paris, and everybody's very pretty in it, and so it's fun.
Amazing. Okay.
That's my pitch.
That's your pitch. Website, social, anything else?
It's just my name.
Great.
Yep. Roshani Chokshi. Sorry.
That's my name.
That's my name. What is my name? Who am I?
All right, girl. Well, thank you.
I had a blast.
So much for this.
Awesome.
We clearly have a lot more. After 10 years. We have not seen each other in 10 years.
Yep.
So after 10 years of not seeing each other, this was a great...
CPK.
We did. We went to California Pizza Kitchen because...
Nostalgia.
Was a little bit disappointed in my choice of food. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it was fine.
Yeah.
And so we got lots more to catch up on.
Yep.
Lots of friendship to rewind
To catch
into
up
and
on.
catch up on. And anyways, thank you so much.
You are still the best.
You are still the most successful. Here's to another 10 years. Here's to forcing you to go to a reunion with me.
Okay.
And seeing what other incredible work you put out into the world.
Woohoo.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Roshani is such a hoot and so much fun to talk to, as I'm sure you gathered from our conversation. And don't worry, I will update you on our 10-year reunion because you know there will be stories to share. If you want to get in touch with me, feel free to find me on Instagram at Tallia Deljoux and my website, talliadeljoux.com. And shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you. sincerelymepodcast@gmail.com. And that's a wrap. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode. Stay tuned for next week for another great conversation. And have a lovely day. Sincerely, me.